Probably just cold out there. All right, we are live. Welcome, everyone. Say hello.
Hey, hello, everybody.
This is Lately Live. I'm Kate Bradley Turnus, Lately CEO, and I'm so excited to bring to you Carla today. She's a superstar juggernaut marketer, and we've got a whole 30 minutes with her. So really thank you so much, Carla. Let me tell everybody about you, and then we'll kind of dive right in. Okay, cool. So if you don't know Carla, she's a global keynote speaker, a marketing expert, a world-renowned storyteller, and she's worked with like a long list of brands of not one, but 7 books in the hopper right now, which is like, mind-blowing. She's been named one of the top 50 women in marketing, and she's the chair of the ANA's Business Marketing Association Board of Directors. So like, yeah, kind of a badass. Game-changing innovation. So much, Carla. So thanks again, and welcome to Lately Live.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. I'm excited to talk about some of my favorite things with you, Kate.
All right. Well, let's dive right into it. So not most recent, as I just found out, but your most recent, right? This beautiful sentence in there that you wrote called "The buyer's journey is no longer a guided tour," which really resonated with me. So can you talk a little bit about that? Like, how did that?
And it's so interesting because I think one thing that marketers still are trying to get a handle on is the fact that they need to document and really understand what it is that buyers do in their decision-making process. So I think even just having the idea of a buyer's journey has been a big step forward. And you can see I can't talk without my hands, so you're going to see my happy hands in here. This idea of being able to understand the customer and really what happens in their world is huge. And when we look at this idea of the buyer's journey, there's 2 points of view of it. So, or I should say 2 tiers of it. First is the buyer's journey. And that's really what we look at when we think of the buyer's funnel. It's, awareness and moving down through conversion. And then what happens afterwards when you look to retain all of the customers. So that's really the buyer's journey. But we have to expand even how we look at our relationship with buyers and customers and consumers in all facets, and really expand that into what's the customer journey. Because when you look at the customer journey, it involves so much more than just the fact that they are now looking to become aware, make a informed decision, make a purchase. It's so much more than that. We have to understand what's the entire customer journey that doesn't even involve us. Because when we start to look at that, really then the buyer's journey is maybe only the last third of the relationship. So when we focus on this, one is that we're missing out on 2/3 of the opportunity that we have to create this relationship, that if we don't do it, either it's not being done or our arch rivals are doing it. So, we want to be at the party. And that's what I really want marketers to understand, is really look at what's this bigger opportunity that's there that we don't even realize is there. The second thing is that if we think we can guide this and strategically give potential customers, a baton to pass from one step to the other, we're fooling ourselves, because that's not how buyers buy. And even if you look at what brings somebody into the buyer's ecosystem, you may have someone who has an urgent, immediate need, and they're on their smartphone trying to solve that problem right away, and bam, they're wanting to make a decision. So they didn't come nicely through that funnel. They entered at the bottom, made a decision. Now you really have to bring them back around and understand them as a customer, and understand how that trigger and that purchase point really put them into your ecosystem as a customer. So in understanding the customer journey, we have to understand the triggers and the purposes for their behavior. And that's never linear. So that's why we talk about in the book, it can't be guided, because guided assumes that there's a logical process that's involved. You can inspire it. You can look at what are those key points that really matter most to your audience. And you can build amazing experiences around those, but you're never going to be able to guide it bit by bit like people assume when they map a customer journey.
Yeah, I mean, so of course, as a startup, we deal with this all the time, and several times now we've mapped our customer journey as best as we can, or what we presume it to be, and
Uh-huh.
have been learning exactly what you said. Like, there's so many other different entry points, and that you need to start being aware of, and that you or discover, and then having that need to actually push them back through the funnel is really key. And how do you do that? Because we both know, or you learn, they need certain bits of information along the way in order to make the purchase, not only to make the purchase, but then to remain a customer, and then to love you enough to evangelize you, right? Because it's not enough to just to buy, but it's got to stay, love, and blab, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And it's also looking at the content as marketers about how do we blend all that content together, because you can never have enough resources, time, people to create all the content for each, individual persona, for each, touch point, for each everything. You have to look at what's most meaningful based on what adds value to your customer. And it's hard because it changes a lot too.
Yes. I mean, you're definitely describing my life. So for customers who maybe are new to this idea, even of just the journey, like can you give a quick tip on journey mapping, like to get started on, if somebody wanted to actually even begin to understand what a customer experience would be like?
Yeah, absolutely. And because you and I were talking about travel before we hopped on with everybody else, I'm going to use the example of planning a vacation. So if you are a credit card company, we'll take that for example, and you look at the buyer's journey, or for them, the buyer user journey, where would people use their credit card? It's at a point of sale, a point of transaction, right? And so when you do that, you really limit that opportunity you have to build a relationship. But if you look at this customer journey, now you look at this situation from the point of view of, okay, if somebody's going to plan a vacation, how do they start? You start out by going, do we have enough money to take a vacation this year? Okay, we have enough money. Like, check that box. Now, where do we want to go? I know when I go on vacation, I start to ask my friends, my family, where did you go that was great? Did you drive? Did you fly? How did you get there? Did you go just you and your spouse, your kids? How big of a family did you bring? You started to do all of this homework. Okay, but
That's
really,
true.
there aren't things in that part that require me to use my credit card yet, right? But that's part of my journey that will take me into a situation that I will use a credit card. Because once I make these decisions about if I want to go on vacation, then where do I want to go? How do I want to go? Do I want to drive my own car? Do I want to rent a car? Do I want to fly? Do we want to sail? Whatever the vacation is. How do you get there? And then once you're there, you're going to book a hotel, maybe stay with relatives, you'll go out to eat. You're definitely going to go do some things that are fun. That involves the credit card. And when you can start to look at this bigger journey and the experience a customer can have with a brand, that's when you move your brand out of a transactional commodity, like you think about a credit card at that immediate point of sale, into one that you can create a loyal experience with them. So you can start to add value to this customer journey way before anybody ever actually uses their credit card. If you start to, create content, social posts, like Try Lately, start to do this series of posts about how to plan a family vacation, or you do a series of blog posts, how to pick the best hotel in New York City in July, or something like that. There's this great opportunity to really see how your product fits into your customer's world once you understand what their world actually looks like.
So that leads really perfectly into this other quote that is brilliant. From experience. So you talked about shifting marketing from a subservient department that creates content only to describe the value of a product or service into one that knows how to create, manage, and lead the creation of valuable experiences. And why this is so interesting to me is because marketing is very much a black box of mystery to many companies, and even and even understanding its value. While there's so many new ways to measure it today, even we are just like, well, there's a little magic going on there, but because of that, it does get tossed aside as an afterthought, for a lot of companies. What we're talking about now is the exact opposite. While it's essential to being a part of that journey and to helping people trust and understand you, all along the way. And so I was wondering, when you're working with companies, how do you get them to make this shift in their mind? This is the way you think about marketing, but the way you think about customers and the storytelling as well.
The first thing I do is talk about all the work that needs to be done, whether it's marketing, IT, whoever's in the room, from the point of view of the customer. Okay. And so when we start talking about what is it your customer truly needs, and we can go down the line and this and this and this and this, what they start to see, if we talk about it from the customer point of view, and what people, and even to a certain degree marketers do, they tend to focus on the product. Because even marketers, to be honest, have a really hard time understanding this new role that we really need to have. And if marketers don't understand it, they can't explain it to outside people. You can't market something that you don't know how to do yourself. And so we look at, okay, let's just have a conversation about what do customers need? And generally people tend to default to product because that's what they sell and that's what they know. So they go, well, they need this because it does this, this, and this, right? It's our features and benefits, tapes playing in our head. But when we start to talk about, okay, this aside, let's talk about that bigger picture. What's a day in a life of your customer look like? And then you start to put them mentally into that customer's world. And they see, oh, well, there's this and this. And especially if you can get marketing people and sales people, maybe product people in the room, because they all see the customer from these different dimensions, but they haven't talked about how it all comes together. And that's kind of your crystal ball of looking into your customer. And so once you do that, then they start to see, oh, wow, I didn't realize that's why that happens. Salespeople are saying, well, I didn't realize that's what happens, and maybe I shouldn't sell that way, or I should do something different. And the product people are going, okay, now I get why you keep promising the customers this, and we never took that into consideration, and we just assumed they wanted this. So it's a lot of times it's the first time that these cross-departmental teams have ever had one conversation together in a room. And then when you add marketing into that, because we say, okay, if these are the kind of things that we really want to know that add richness to how we know our customer, who brings that information into the organization? The salespeople are going to go, oh, I do because I sell to them. And we say, okay, back to that buyer's journey versus the customer journey. Salespeople are involved in a buyer's journey. Do you now, salespeople, want to own another 2/3 of a journey? And of course they're going to say no, because it takes too long. There's no commission check involved. Okay, so we have this 2/3 of the journey. Who's going to own it? Is it the product people? They're like, well, I don't, I'll develop products and launch them, but they don't want to reverse engineer it and start out by saying, instead of saying this is a product that we want to launch, let's start out by saying what customer problem do we need to solve? Because what typically happens in an organization is that they create a product, get it ready to launch, and it's probably 2/3 of the way down the pipeline to being launched. And then they call in marketing and say, okay, let's do some focus groups. And really the focus groups are to tweak something that already exists or to learn about messaging. It's not to determine, does this need to be done at all? So they've already spent all this R&D money, investment. So they don't want to throw something out the window that they've invested so much in. So that's why I'm a huge, huge proponent of marketing, looking at our own role differently. So when we can start to look at how do we educate those customers during that first 2/3 of the customer journey that nobody's paying attention to, that's that experience opportunity. And we see this with amazing consumer brands. You see it with B2B brands. If you look at Johnson's Baby Center, that's what that's all about, is building that audience and building that brand affinity. That's an entire experience all on its own. That is completely a value that drives sales. You look at it with Kraft and the magazine that they've published. They have a marketing department that actually generates revenue. I mean, if marketing generates revenue, people are going to go, you're a cost center. We don't know what to do with this. Then they start to look at marketing differently. You look at companies like Schneider Electric. They have a university that trains people how to become better at what they do. We look at Lincoln Electric welding equipment. They have a magazine that teaches welders how to be better at their profession. Really look at it as a craft. So those are the kind of things that marketers need to look at. I talk about a lot of marketers themselves, and I know a majority of organizations look at marketing as a do-me function. Can you do me a sales sheet? Can you do me a web, if that's how you perceive your work as a marketer, or you see your work being perceived as a marketer, then you're not marketing correctly, because you need to understand the value that marketing brings to the table to start with, so you can start to change some of those internal conversations. Because I guarantee you, once people understand the power that marketing has, they're going to want them at the table.
Yeah, so it's so interesting. I mean, one of our experiences that have surprised us is, we've been working with a couple of Fortune 500 companies, and as we're having a working session with them or a demo, they're actually asking us for marketing advice in the conversation, which is so wonderful, right? That's one of the cool things about all marketers, whether you're starting out or more, and there's so much information, I feel like you're also forgetting it. So part of it is you just want to be reminded, right? And I think there's this, because there's so much to know, there's not a helplessness, but it's sort of like we all want to be directed a little bit more. We want that guided tour, marketers. And as it was occurring to me, like, wow, we're giving them a tool to do their job better, but people really still just want to know the basics all the time. And they want to be, to what you're saying about like those magazines, those magazines are really supporting people on the other side, like this, or the functionality that would go with it, or I just kept thinking about the emotion that's tied to that, right? They're thinking about how somebody feels about going about their job, and they're addressing the feeling within.
And that's a huge part. Yeah. Empathy in marketing is huge, to be able to understand not just how is a decision made within an organization, but how do people actually feel about that decision? How do they feel about their job? How do they feel about their work? And it's the same internally with employees. And so when we talk about storytelling and experiences and building that bridge, the same is so true inside a company as it is outside. And it is, that's what we forget. And I think going back to those basics of let's create first an amazing story that's different, that's really built on a purpose. Like, what is it that we're here to achieve? And it's never about money. It's like, what's the difference we can make for employees so they get excited to get out of bed on a Monday morning and come to work? How do we get potential customers and customers excited that our salespeople are emailing them, that are calling on them, that they're going to stop by and see? How do we create that experience that makes people feel like that? I go back to the work that Craig Coffey has done at Lincoln Electric with his magazine ARC for the welding community. And he launched it. And I think within the first 4 to 6 weeks, he had over 6,000 people subscribe to it. And I ask marketers all the time, if you had to ask people to literally subscribe to a piece of content that you send out, what's the chances that they would do it? So this shows he knew his audience. He knew the story he was telling. He told it in a really engaging, compelling way. And this has been going on now 4 or 5 years. He has, a circulation of well over 150,000, every quarter. And so you can see this is an experience that his audience absolutely thrives on. And now he can see it internally with the clout and, kind of the swagger in a way that marketing has within his organization. And I think that's one thing that marketers need to remember, that they really can be the heroes in their organization with what they can do.
So I've got 2 ideas that I want to ask you about, and they're both like right on topic. So I'm not sure which one to go first, but I'm going to go with this one. So you're touching on something really interesting, as a way to excited or buy-in, and let's talk about that some more. Like, that's, of course I do that. I don't know if my employees do this, but I do
right.
So let's talk about the value of that, and then maybe some ways that meant that themselves. Like, what's around that?
This ability to activate employees is so huge. And there's a report I always look for every year that comes out in January. It came out about 10 days ago, January 20th, from Edelman PR in Chicago, and it's called the Edelman Trust Barometer. And one of the things that they do, they've done this since 2000, so this is their 19th year, is that they look at people and organizations around the world to see who people trust. And I think this year they surveyed, or they had over 33,000 people around the world respond to this year's report. And this year there's been a huge shift in where people go to get information from a source that they feel is trusted. And right now it's employees are looking to their employers to give them information. And I think part of this is the political environment that we see everywhere around the world. I mean, in the US, there's a lot of tension around fake news and a political divide, but we see that in many countries around the world. We see it in how things are handled from NGOs and corruption and things that's being uncovered. So now you have employees who are going to, kind of like mom and dad, when you think about the employers, to say, who do I trust and what do you think about this and what do I do? And I think that's a tremendous sign for what employers really need to do is step up to the plate and say, we have this amazing opportunity to really build a cohesive, strong, and like emotionally connected culture within our organizations. And to be honest, it has been a long time since companies looked at business from that point of view. But there's one thing that's certain, is that research shows that the more engaged your employees are and the better experience they have as employees, your customer experience stats are absolutely mirroring those. And so when you have happy people showing up to work every day that feel that they have a purpose and a reason to be there, they show that in the work that they do with customers. And it doesn't mean that they have to be customer facing. People who feel like they have a purpose when they show up at work, they're more creative, they're more innovative, they're more collaborative. There's less inefficiency because people aren't bickering and backstabbing. It's a place they want to go to. And, I give you a huge amount of kudos, Kate, because there's a lot of startups who start down this path and they're like, come on, we got to go. We got to keep the lights on and the doors open and, theoretically paychecks coming. We have a huge mission, but a lot of it is just about, keeping your head above water. But when startups start out and they focus on that culture and the employees, that's a huge part of being successful and having that sustainable growth.
Thank you so much. I mean, we do. I really believe in this as well, because in the end, I mean, we all have to go to work every day, right? So we want to be happy and enjoy ourselves, but it does bleed out. And we do see that it lately. Hopefully I'm not speaking for them too much, but I do see a lot of happiness happening around here. But we talk a lot about how internally we want to be able to do what we do for our customers inside as well, and sort of talk the talk and walk the walk, and the family that we are, and have an open-ended discussion and take criticism and all these kinds of things. And because I believe, sounds like you do as well, is that when you have internal champions, there's all that, employee advocacy that happens automatically, and they should be your best champions, right?
Absolutely. Because when you look at who do people trust, when people go to a cocktail party or, birthday party or out to dinner and people say, how's work? And people go, oh, are you kidding? You would not believe what happened this week. I mean, employees are going to open the closet doors and pull out those skeletons. They're going to throw the hood up. They're, because it's always, don't tell anybody I said this, but, here's what's going on. But if you could switch that and go, man, I had the best day ever. Maybe they worked a 10-hour day. Maybe they worked a 16-hour day. But if they have that reason for doing it and that positive stress and a clear purpose, it's not that they want to work those kind of hours all the time, but you can get people inspired and motivated to do it when it's needed. And that makes a huge difference. And the interesting thing is, when you have employees who feel like that about their job, it is so much easier to recruit that top talent, because it's people saying, I love my job. And then you have 5 of their friends going, do they have any openings? Right. And if they're an employee who loves their job and does great work, people of a feather flock together. You want them telling their network about, you should, come look at Try Lately because it's great. We do this and this. And it's not just lip service. It's being able to have those tangible expressions of what culture is and how those values come into play. I have such huge admiration for Emerson and their CMO, Kathy Button-Bell. And one of the things that they're working on is their values, and they've been launching them internally. And now their next campaign that's coming out is called We See, and it's about how these values that they hold so dearly internally, how they come out in what they actually do that drive innovation, that drive collaboration, and all these things. So it's not something that's just lip service. It's actually tangible things that you can feel, that you can see in how the company functions. And it's incredible. It's really powerful, to be honest.
Yeah, I love it. Internal marketing. I didn't even know about it. I mean, I didn't know that they do, right? It's nice to put a name on it. And it's reminding me, so the other thing that you were really segueing into perfectly, which I want to talk about, is the difference between content and storytelling, which ties in here as well, right? So let's talk about what the difference is, and then do storytelling.
Yes, absolutely. So, I mean, content is exactly what it says. You know, it's a sales sheet, it's a web page, it's an email, it is it's a video, it's a videoable webinar, something like that. It is a piece of content. And content is things that marketers have created since the beginning of time. I mean, we mostly know marketing from the early days based on the advertising that came about because, we got into one of the first eras of marketing, and people had extra stuff that they produced and they had to get rid of it. So, hey, let's put out some flyers. Let's put something in the window, front window of our store. And that's how advertising started. And so a lot of people still perceive marketing just as the ad people, or, the logo t-shirt people, or the, golf hat people, or something like that. So they look at marketing as the people who create the content. And that's a big part of why people still perceive marketers as the do me people, do me a piece of content. But when you look at storytelling, what we're looking at is that you start out first is that you have, from a content marketing point of view, you have your content mission. Who is it we're serving? What's the change we're going to deliver? And what value will they receive? When I look at it from branding or brand purpose, I look at that brand purpose statement. That's generally 10 to 12 words long that talks about the difference that you make in the lives of your customers. It's never about revenue, but it's something that no one else can claim. So you start out with that as a foundation. Now, how do you bring the characters into play? And the characters are your customers who've been successful. As marketers, we've heard for so long now, especially with storytelling, about the hero's journey. And how do we tell that from that point of view of making customers successful without making it all about your product? So a big reason that storytelling has become so popular in the last, especially 5 years, is because as we look at companies moving from being product focused and into customer focused, the way that you do that is to stop doing do me content that's features and benefits about products, and you start doing story driven content that helps your customers understand what their pain is, what their need is. And then you guide them along that storyline in a way that answers the questions that matter most to them in the moments that they need them.
And so when you're, and impressive as a person, I'm just like osmosis over there. And we only have a couple more minutes, which is a shame because I'm really enjoying this. But when it comes to storytelling, should you talk about your brand if you're writing a piece of content that says 5 tips on vacationing in Barcelona? Do you want to include your brand in that at all, or the product, or do you want to somehow segue it to yourself, or do you just want to let it lie?
And this goes back to what's your content marketing mission? What is it you're wanting to do? And then also I tell every marketer, you have to have a purpose for every single piece of content you're creating, or you shouldn't be creating it, because there's so many requests. The hardest thing in marketing is to know what to say no to. So that's what that content marketing mission helps with. And it's also what a brand purpose statement helps with. And so I tell marketers, okay, first, understand where my arm is clear out here. I'm like, understand where you are in this customer journey. And then, in the buyer journey, and understand the purpose of each piece of content. Because if you're clear out here in this first part of the customer journey, all you should be doing is helping your customer understand what the problem is. And we see this a lot with Johnson Baby Center. We see it with some of these other brands I'm trying to think of. Emerson does this with their I Love STEM. ARC Magazine from Lincoln Electric does this. It's looking at how do we build an audience out here to start with. And that is absolutely customer and audience focused. But then as you move into this maybe second 2/3, Then what you're looking to do is how do you win them over to your brand? So definitely, if you're going to win them onto a team, they have to know what that team is and what it's all about, right? You can't say, "Hey, come join our team," and it's a big, black mark over the logo. It's like a secret society that way. So then definitely you want to talk about your brand. But then if you go into that that final third, the buyer journey, or even into a customer focused kind of content, that's when you're trying to grow your business. And if you think about like Salesforce's Dreamforce, that's a huge example of that. I mean, it's clearly branded, but it truly is all about that customer. And it's still telling a tremendous story. They're exhibiting tremendous things about the experience that they deliver based on that story. You can tell it's internally driven. People love working for Salesforce. And you can see that in that incredible growth that they have and the engagement that they have as customers. You start to see this with now Marketo becoming a part of Adobe. And so the interesting thing is with this storytelling and how you tell it and where you insert the brand is that you have to understand where in the storyline that you are and what makes sense. But if you are writing that early piece of content and you keep trying to insert your brand into it, it feels like a bad first date. You're on a first date and you're thinking, I'll kind of go and I'll see what he's like. And, maybe we'll have something in common. And every time you turn around, the guy's going, "Want to get married? Here, I got the ring. I know where we're going to live. I know how to, it's like, just get away." It's the same thing with brands and how they start to build that relationship. We've all probably all had that kind of date where somewhere along the line, you're like, that's, too much too soon. The same thing happens with marketing.
It's true. So Carla, where can people learn more about you?
My website is carlajohnson.co, and on Twitter I'm at Carla Johnson, and LinkedIn Carla Johnson as well.
Wonderful. I just want to say thanks again. This has been really incredibly educational for me personally, and I know for our listeners as well. So thank you so much. There's more Lately Live coming your way. You can watch old episodes and all the new ones as well as in this one too. We'll be streaming www.trylately.com for more info. And thanks again.
Thanks, Kate. It was great to be with you today.
All right. Rock on, Carla. Bye.
Be with you today.
All right. Rock on, Carla. Bye.